You shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
We live in great times because the internet has given the world a voice, but other than complaining, it seems like they have absolutely nothing to say.
Igrihe.
It's going to be a really good time.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
From writer and director James Gray, we get a Brad Pitt-driven, heart-pounding, at least for the first 15-minute, edge-of-your-seat movie that's set in space, where no one can hear you scream, "Hey, get this fucking monkey off me." This week on episode 121 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, we are reviewing Ad Astra. I'm your host, Cinik, and joining me, as always, are my co-hosts that definitely have the right stuff, Igrihe and Kim. Ryan is off this week because he recently rented a Miles Morales Spider-Man costume and is currently fighting crime and Amazon in the greater Queensboro. So if you enjoy what you're listening to, like, listen, subscribe. Most importantly, enjoy the show. Kim, from Jump, we get a visually heart-stopping sequence of events as Roy falls from the space antenna during the surge. What kind of impact did this opening scene have for you? I mean, did you think Roy was done for and maybe the movie was done in past tense?
That's exactly what I thought. I thought this was the ending of the movie and we're going to backtrack and we're going to look at how he got to this particular point in time. But then I remembered, oh yeah, this entire thing is supposed to be done from space. So that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it was probably the most exciting sequence of the entire movie, unfortunately.
We really did get it all, and the worst part about it was kind of ruined in the previews. The trailers showed this thing to begin with, although I did see it on a Dolby screen in IMAX, and it was nothing less than amazing. And that would be my luck as I was watching Roy fall to the earth. That would be the old Cinik luck. Like, all right, I survived the drop, parachute's out, and things fall down and rip my parachute to shreds, and I plummet to the earth. I have no idea, realistically, IG, does anybody survive from that?
Never. Not a chance. The likelihood of falling from simply 2 stories, right? Most people will die if you fall from more than 2 stories up. You're going to die. And that's, 20 feet. That's it. And you're going to fall from that distance, and, even if the parachute slows your fall 50%, you're probably still going to die. And if not at least going to suffer many, many, many broken bones, internal bleeding, everything else, right? It's just going to ruin your whole weekend and probably going to kill you. So I guess, it's a movie. I'll suspend disbelief again, and that's fine. But they're really pushing the boundaries in a lot of these movies lately where it's like, oh, look how amazing this guy is. We can do all these things and still survive because he's awesome.
Well, I preference this question to you with love. I've been to the top of the Empire State Building. I've been to the Grand Canyon with you. And I even survived those terrible reach up and touch the moon seats that you bought for us at that Twins game that time. The opening sequence actually gave me a fear of heights. After a fall like that, would you ever put on a spacesuit again? Would you even leave the ground floor?
Nope, it'd be Rambler-style living from then on. Maybe going underground or something, as long as I couldn't see down the stairs. It'd have to be a gradual decline, because anything going downward from that point on would be done. Like airplanes, no thanks. I'd be John Madden all over again, everywhere in a bus. That's all I'm doing. Because, that apparently, being up is a problem because you're going to fall. That old saying, what goes up must come down, kind of rings true here because he went down hard and fast.
How about you, Kim? Would it be straight mole person? After a fall like that, if you survive, you bounce twice and you live, is it underground for you? Or would you venture up on an escalator or possibly a 3-story building?
I'm definitely going to go from Kim Caperton to Kimmy Schmidt and live in a bunker somewhere in Indiana for sure, because it's not freaking happening.
You go to Wyoming, they only have 1 escalator in the whole state. Safest place I can think to go.
That's where I'm moving.
Isn't that where Better Call Saul is now doing Cinnabons? Or is that Omaha? That was great that he even said that at the end of Breaking Bad. He's like, I'm going to end up in Omaha managing a Cinnabon. And that's exactly where he ended up. Kim, we like our blockbusters big and loud, especially in space. You want to leave the theater with your ears ringing. But Ad Astra, did you appreciate the different approach they took as far as sound? I mean, it was more muted. It was more laid back. Even the explosions were kind of muffled.
I'm going to save my overall critique of the movie, I think, for, the end here. But I will say that it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. When they showed the previews for the movie, and I saw them everywhere. I saw them coming through on Fandango notifications, on YouTube ads and Facebook and whatnot. The way that they showed it made it sound like it was heart-stopping, edge of your seat action for the whole 2 hours and 2 minutes. And there wasn't that. So I was disappointed.
It was like you put chocolate chip cookies in and they came out oatmeal. It was shown to us in a different light than it actually was. And maybe that is a little bit of false advertising, but I personally did like the approach of the isolation of the sound, because you figure space is big and lonely. And I think they kind of did a little bit of that in Gravity too. Like you just didn't hear the big explosions. You didn't hear, it was much more of a muffled approach, which I kind of appreciated. IG, do you think this movie gets made without Brad Pitt? His aura, his mug is on the poster. He puts asses in the seat. I mean, the movie basically relied on his ability to be alone with just facial expressions and thoughts. Do you think Brad Pitt pulled it off?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, no, this movie doesn't get made without Brad Pitt, because you need a large enough star power to pull in, especially after everything he did in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which obviously, this was being made before that even came out. But knowing that he is a draw, right? Generally, everything he's done in the last 15, 20 years has pulled a significant amount of money in. So this is only going to get made with him. You put some unknown in it, this movie goes straight to video and makes $12 cash. That being said, although this movie wasn't what I expected, Brad Pitt did do a fantastic job. And, maybe I'll even go so far as to say that his acting in this was near Oscar worthy, because he did do a good job. The story isn't Oscar worthy, so I don't think he'll get a nod for that, but he did more than could, I think, have been expected with what was given to him. He did a great job. So yes, his star power is and his ability to act in this movie is the only thing that actually kept me able to watch this all the way through, quite honestly.
It kind of reminded me of Into the Wild, because 75% of the movie is just Brad Pitt alone with his thoughts. So you needed somebody that could not only narrate through the internal struggle that he was going through, but someone that you could also read his expressions. And with the little amount of things he had to do throughout the movie, I thought he carried it almost perfectly. Kim, you didn't appreciate the sound, but let's talk a little bit of the cinematography. To me, it was kind of intriguing. The movie took a different direction than most. Much like the muted sounds, there was a lot of unique long shots of space, and then really close-up shots of Brad Pitt's face. And then even in the opening sequence, when he was breaking up with his girlfriend, everything around him, much like the background of Skype, was blurry, and the only thing that you could see was Roy. Did you enjoy any of those choices, and did they work for you?
I think graphically it was well done. I did enjoy that. I will give it that. But in my mind, like I said, when you see how something is advertised and it's, they put that dramatic music behind, the quick cut scenes, and it draws you in, and you think that this is going to be well worth my $12 or whatever you end up paying going to the movies. Then you get there and it's not quite that. It's a little bit of a struggle for me, because visually it was well done. And I'm a flaw seeker when I'm watching movies. I'm always finding, errors or something like that, or, little tidbits of things that maybe could have been done differently. I don't know why, my eyes are drawn to them. And I didn't really see any of that. The CGI was really crisp. The way that they showed the planets and the moon sequence, which I thought was really cool with the pirates or whatever on it. There was a lot of things about it that were really, really well done. But you're right, the storyline left a little bit to be desired. It was kind of predictable.
Yeah, predictable, and you saw way too much of it in the trailer. Speaking of conventional wisdom, though, Kim, I realized that Roy's dad was deep in outer space. He's all the way in Neptune. It's not like he's in Georgia. The conventional wisdom of trusting the son of a traitor, even though he's a Boy Scout and half a superhero. We all know that families are complicated. We all love them, but could you help take a family member down? And was NASA kind of silly for thinking that he would help?
You know, it almost makes you wonder if that's the kind of mind games that the military plays with, you know, their special ops, their troops, their majors or whatever. When they're putting them into these kind of situations, they know how to pull strings. They know how to play people like puppets. And there's a scene where he's walking down the hall and he's like, they're using me, you know, they're playing me or whatever. And I thought, he's in a power struggle right now. Like, if he says something about it, what are they going to do? They're going to cut him. They have no problem with doing off with an individual. Clearly. I mean, the way that they would say, okay, this person is deceased, and then they just floated them out into space. They had a complete reckless disregard for, you know, the lives of the individuals that were doing these missions. His back's kind of against the wall. What's he going to do? He has to do it.
Any tact he takes, unless it's total acceptance of the mission, they're just going to kind of cast him aside. And it's not like they're dropping him off in the middle of Texas. He's on Mars. So, you know, that kind of sucks. IG, we're both huge Star Wars fans, and we want to go to space and ride on the Millennium Falcon, and hopefully we'll do that in Florida someday. But commercial space travel was touched on in this movie, which we are getting closer and closer to. At what point, when it becomes the norm, what point safety-wise and price point-wise would you take advantage of it and stick your big toe into outer space?
Well, I think if I can get a ticket to go to space for under $2,000, I would go. But to just go into space, unless I'm going to spend a few revolutions around the Earth in it, I don't want to just get into space and come back down and land somewhere else. Like, if I'm going to spend $2,000, I want to like go around the Earth a couple times, go to the moon, something, because $2,000 is a lot of money for most people. For me, anyway, I'm not rich, so they really need to make it affordable. And that's the thing, is like air travel. Like, I can fly from here in the Midwest to Florida for $25 if I watch for the right deal. And that's beneficial, you know, but right now, any of the things that they're selling just to get into what's considered space is like $50,000. Like, who's just got that kind of money just to throw at it for, you know, a minute in what's considered space, because you're doing a big up and down and coming back down somewhere else. And right now, what's the point? Unless you can go into space and either go to the space station or take a couple of revolutions around the planet. What's the point? You know, just so you can say you've been there. You know, I guess if you're Neil Armstrong and say, yeah, I've been on the moon, try and top that sucker. Great. But the rest of us is like, you know, being into space isn't that impressive anymore. There have been a lot of people in space, so I'm not going to spend 5 figures or more just to say I've been in space. I'd rather spend 5 figures at a Disney park and spend an afternoon, because that's what it costs now.
A whole afternoon, he says. $50,000, that'll get you like the first 2 hours.
That's right.
With the way he buys souvenirs, you're 100% right. Well, IG, let's talk about Destination Moon. I mean, you give a man a new frontier and a new planet, and he's most definitely going to litter it with Cinnabons and Five Guy franchises. Is this the moon's future? And will you be the first man to boldly eat cinnamon rolls where no man has before?
Well, just like you, like, I start drooling every time I walk into a mall that has a Cinnabon immediately. And if there are Cinnabons wherever this is going, that might be the reason to spend the $50,000 to go there to have a Cinnabon. Now, just saying I've been there that's not important. But to say I went there and had a Cinnabon, okay, now we're talking some business, you know. So one of the things I think the Disney park doesn't have is they don't have Cinnabon. They have cinnamon rolls, but they don't have Cinnabon. And I don't care who you are, Cinnabon is better than any cinnamon roll on the planet at this point. Like, I've had some really good cinnamon rolls from mom and pop bakeries that are really good. I don't know. I think Cinnabon puts like literal cocaine in their cinnamon rolls because they're that good.
Yeah, I think there might be one in Universal, but before Louis C.K. died in that tragic masturbation accident, he used to do a great bit about Cinnabons in airports, how you can't eat one and not feel like a complete piece of shit while you're eating it, even though he'll get one every single time he sees one.
Every time.
Kim, very little traditional action in this movie, but we did get a little bit of a pirate space skirmish on the moon. Do you feel that the sequence was long enough, or do you think they spent just enough time on it? And was it believable?
I think it was pretty believable, especially considering they were making an attempt to get to the dark side of the moon. There was a little bit of a time crunch there. At least I'd like to think so. It was nice. I thought that there was a good amount of action with that. Some people died, saw some, mask get shot, yada, yada. I liked it. I think that was, for the second act, that was pretty good.
It was definitely one of the high points of the movie. IG, I realized that there was very little soundtrack, but how do you not license Pink Floyd in that? You're headed to the dark side of the moon. How do you not get Pink Floyd in your movie?
That's what I was thinking. Like, oh, we have to get to the dark side. I'm like, where's the fucking song? What are we doing here, guys? Like, it exists. Like, it's one of the greatest albums of all time. The Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon is like top 10, like everywhere. It's that good of an album. Like, front to back, it's a great album. And I don't buy into that whole tracking up with the Wizard of Oz nonsense. That's BS. Dark Side of the Moon is just a great album. Good music. And why wouldn't you put that in here? Like, Pink Floyd music has shown up in plenty of other movies, so they're more than willing to license their stuff out. You spent billions of dollars, it seems, advertising, because like Kim said earlier, the advertisements were everywhere for this. Spend $1,000 and put Dark Side of the Moon in this somewhere, at least, like even when something else is going on, just so the reference is there. I don't care. Like, what's wrong with people today? And maybe Cinik, it's because we're such music people and we love so much music that when they miss such a golden opportunity, and maybe it's just too on the nose, but I'm sorry. The music would have fit thematically and everything, even with everything else going on here. So I think it would have been a perfect fit. And I'm more upset that it's not there now that you mention it than even before.
The crew sets out to Mars only to be hailed down by a distress call and forced to respond. IG, I like to call it the monkey business in space sequence. When Captain Tanner put on his spacesuit that morning, do you think he was fairly certain that that would be the last way that he would die? And probably the one thing that's not covered under his insurance policy, intergalactic primate death.
Isn't it always something, you never think that's going to be a problem, insurance companies and their nonsense. And it's like, well, you can't ride a motorcycle because motorcycle collisions aren't covered in your insurance policy. And of course, do they not know how common primate death really is? I mean, it's running rampant in many parts of the universe. It really needs to be covered. And I'm sorry, somebody needs to get on the whole insurance lobby and tell them that primate death needs love too. We need to get this covered.
Over 2 people annually die from it.
2? That's 2 people that aren't covered. 2.
This movie made me feel a lot of things, but most importantly, it made me feel a sentiment that I have fucking said over and over again on this show: fuck space. Because there's so many different ways to die out there. Space is just looking to kill you, and now they just invented a new way. I'm terrified of monkeys to begin with, and the last thing I want is a space monkey to come eat my fingers and my nose off before my crew members just casually shoot me into space. No big deal. Cinik just got his nose eaten off. So fuck space. Don't ever go. I don't care how much the prices come down. I don't care how cool it is up there, how many Cinnabons they put up there. You're not getting me off this planet. I'll be the last one on it. I'll shut the lights out when everybody leaves. Don't worry about it, but you're not getting me into space.
Fuck space and fuck monkeys, right?
Exactly. Kim, the captain, loses it as they go to land on Mars. Roy takes over, saving the day. Do we chalk this up to, hey, my co-pilot just got eaten by the outbreak monkey? Or is it the crew's duty to report it? I mean, Homeboy is flying and landing shuttles and all.
I think it was a healthy dose of foreshadowing that he was ready to start breaking some rules in order to get the kind of outcome he was really, truly hoping for. And he'd been battling back and forth with it. You could tell when they said, oh, well, your pulse rate's never gone above 80. Is that true? Even during the fall? With all of the stress and is my dad alive? Is he not alive? I'm having a fraternal struggle here. For him to keep his cool when he's going through these psychological evaluations every single day, and then to, McBride at least, to completely break the rules by not reporting something is setting up, the third act. It's what's about to come. And more importantly, I'm just, for shits and giggles, did the monkeys set off the distress signal because they were running low on food? I'm just curious. Because nobody else was alive.
They could do sign languages. They surely could hit a big red button and start a distress signal. But where were all the other bodies? We really didn't get to see those. I mean, did they devour them entirely? I don't know. IG on Mars, they use Roy to send a message to his father, like we mentioned before, and they elicit an emotional response from him. And he's quickly discarded, surprise, surprise, by the space agency. Is it completely unrealistic to say to somebody, oh, and by the way, your dad is Lex Luthor, but keep it together during these messages and try to stay professional?
Yeah, that's unrealistic. Like, first of all, Dad went out for cigarettes 30 years ago with a NASA space mission, and he's been gone. So first of all, you're like, hey, Dad's alive. And you're like, what? Really? What? And he's a supervillain. But, don't let him know that he's a supervillain. Just play along.
And
you
also,
say, hey,
we're never going to refer back to this.
And we're not going to talk about this again. We're going to do it right now. Then it's done. Yeah, that's not realistic. That's not realistic to tell somebody, hey, you can talk to your father now who you've been without since you were very young. Yeah. But then also have him know at the same time that like he may have done some really bad shit.
They made it obvious that he responded, and they're not going to tell the kid. They're not, well, he's not a kid at this point, but they're not going to tell the guy. He knows. So yeah, the guy's going to lose his mind. Like, he wanted to know whether his dad was alive or not. He even told the Donald Sutherland character that I don't trust these guys. I think that my dad's dead, and they're trying to make him a villain. That's why government agencies and big corporations suck, and they pay well. No matter how great you are as an employee, you're always expendable because they're just going to find somebody else to do that job.
And Donald Sutherland actually told him, don't trust anyone. The people you think you can trust, don't. When he was having what I thought was probably a heart attack. And they said he's having surgery, but, we're not going to talk about that either. We're not going to find out what kind of surgery or if he's even alive or not, because it doesn't freaking matter, apparently, because we're also never going to come back to Mars.
Roy storms the ship to Neptune and accidentally kills the crew because he needs to see the mission through. He just saved him, IG. I mean, was this selective amnesia? The guy that just saved you from Curious George and landed the rocket for you without crashing it after the other guy freaked out? Selective amnesia or plot armor? Shouldn't these astronauts been wearing fragile stickers? I mean, they died so easily. They died quicker than low-level mobs when you start out a video game.
And that's the thing, it's all plot armor. It's all doing things to advance the story. So they don't have time to make people hard to kill. They don't have time to have him struggle with the landing. It all needs to happen very quickly because they took the wrong tact with this. This would maybe have been a very, very good Netflix streaming series over 10 to 12 episodes. This maybe would have been a good Amazon series, 10 to 12 episodes. 2-hour movie, they're doing too much in too little time. And the armor on it was so thick because they just needed to keep it pounding along. And that's where you end up with problems in stories and things that don't make any sense and things that don't get to where you need them to go and don't explain anything that they've done before that. It's a real problem.
Well, before all of that, the crew on the ship decided as soon as they took off, they were all going to pop a little white pill, and it's a mood stabilizer. But our buddy Brad didn't take it. He shoves it into his, duffel bag or whatever, and he doesn't take the pill. So it kind of makes you wonder, was that just like a mood stabilizer, or was it some sort of control device for easy kill in case they screwed up the mission themselves without Brad being on the ship? They weren't expecting him to be on the ship. They did take these pills or whatever. So maybe they were hoping, if they screwed it up or whatever, they could pull the plug on him quickly and just wipe them all out. Who knows?
What killed me was the now captain was scared to death to fly the ship. He was scared to death to go over to the other ship to face King Kong. And then now he just accepts a mission to go to Neptune, which is much further away and much more complicated considering that you're carrying a nuclear weapon on board. So Brad Pitt comes to save the day and they're all like, oh no. And he tells them repeatedly, I'm not here to hurt anybody. I'm here to aid the mission. And they're like, get him. because we have orders, rather than this guy probably is our best chance for survival. Screw orders. You're going hundreds of thousands of miles away from civilization
4
to
billion
face.
miles.
Was it 4 billion?
Yeah.
A ridiculous amount of miles. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me, and they died so quickly, which I thought was completely ridiculous. IG, the trip to Neptune makes Roy realize, after he's killed his whole crew, that he actually needs people. Do you believe his self-imposed isolation was a self-defense mechanism due to the circumstances with his father?
Yeah, maybe. That might be it. I mean, it could be any number of things. Could be, the military putting him out there because maybe he's going to have some things that were like his father, and they're just trying to protect him from that. I think more like you just said, self-isolation as a defense mechanism. Either way, anybody that says they don't need another person in their life ever, like I can do it all alone, I don't need anybody else, they're lying to you, because, humans we're pack animals. We need interaction. We need other people. Like, if you've ever seen any of those people that have come from somewhere out on their own for extended periods of time, they're crazy. They've lost a part of being a human. They come back and they're feral, and there's something wrong with them.
Well, and they touched upon that a little bit in the movie, too. He said that I'm kind of between the zero gravity and the being alone out here. I'm starting to lose it a little bit. So they did kind of brush against it. But like you said, there wasn't enough time in the areas that needed to have time in. This would have been better as a long series, but I don't know if you're going to get Brad Pitt to do 10 hours worth of television, unlike somebody like Tom Hardy. Like we spoke about before, family is super complicated. Yours is, mine is. Whoever had a semi-normal upbringing probably wouldn't be listening to something called Cinik Radio. But Roy meets his father, and dear old dad promptly tells him, "It's you, dude. It's not me." Were you as stung as I was at the harsh reception that Cliff gave Roy? And do you think Roy might have been staring his future a little bit in the face?
I think for Roy, we see him on a 79-day, 6-hour, and 4-minute trip from Mars to Neptune, okay? And he starts to lose it. He's in total isolation. He has nobody to talk to. All communications are completely and totally shut down. And then he runs into his dad, Clifford, who has been completely isolated. Everyone's been dead for who knows how many years. And he's been on this ship for 26 years. Maybe, just maybe, his tough exterior and telling his son, "I didn't think about home not one time, or you or your mom," and he referred to him as the orphan, is like disassociation and compartmentalizing, which, I'm sure they probably teach you about in the military, controlling your emotions and whatnot. So I think that for him, he was, I'm so focused on the mission. This is what I want to do. I can't deviate from that. It's the only thing I have to focus on and look forward to. It sucks because, like he was saying earlier, Brad Pitt's facial expressions alone illustrate pretty much the entire scene there. The single Indian tear coming down the cheek and whatnot. When he's talking to him, he says, "People are all we have. We have each other." He's just been through his own little traumatic experience, and now he's here and he's confronting something that he's been plaguing the back of his mind in this locked up little compartment for many years, and all of a sudden he's having to frickin' deal with it. So, it's the father-son relationship, the dynamic, the isolation of it all. It was well done, I think.
Do you buy Clifford's story that he didn't cause the antimatter explosions, that it was crew members that were trying to escape?
No, not at all. I'm almost 100% certain that he said that because he saw his son there, duct taping this bomb to, a piece of his ship. And he was like very protective of the fact that this was, I'm going down with my vessel. The captain always goes down with his ship. And I think he sees that and his defense mechanisms kick in, and it's, I didn't cause that. And that's when that roadblock, that concrete wall comes up in front of him. And all of a sudden it's not him. He didn't do any of this. He didn't cause the explosion. He didn't think about his son. He didn't think about his wife. He didn't think about Earth or whatever. And it's just his way of locking up his feelings and not having to actually deal with them.
I really did feel for Roy in that moment to find out your dad's alive and then just have him turn around and shun you after, like you said, he went 4 billion miles to try to find him and save him and bring him back. I always feel terrible for people who put their parents up on pedestals, because when they find out they're just as screwed up as the rest of us, they're just completely devastated. Like, I can't believe my dad cheated on my mom. I can't believe my mom's a compulsive thief. They're always stunned. And you don't want bad things for your family. You don't want to believe bad things for your family. But at the same time, they're human. They're flawed. Just because they brought you into this world doesn't mean that they're perfect. IG, he downloads the research, tries in vain to get his father to come with him, and blows up the project. But we had two very jump the shark moments that happened. After Roy decides he's going to jump from one ship to another, fly through an asteroid field with a shield looking like Captain America, and place himself perfectly on his ship. Then the ship gets blown up. But he puts himself perfectly into position to fly all the way back from a nuclear explosion from Neptune to Earth, with being pushed by said explosion without being himself disintegrated. I don't know about you, and you live much further away from Ryan than I did, but did you hear a Ryan George groan hundreds of miles away?
I did, and surprisingly, I heard it over my own groan, because I'm like, what? What? There's so many problems with this. Like, so many problems. Like, we've seen pictures of things that get accelerated into space and what they've done just to vessels and satellites and the International Space Station here, right? A small chunk of something will blast a hole right through something. But, apparently they have vibranium or whatever the hell Captain America's shield is made out of, because that must be what that's used. Whatever. I mean, it looked like a damn cookie sheet that he was flying through space with. And somehow that's enough to just knock everything out of his way. And by the way, none of it even deflects him off of his perfectly executed path onto wherever he's going. And then you don't get blown up in space. Like, I understand there's no air, so explosions operate differently, but just things getting thrown at you from the explosion would have done enough to just tear you to shreds. But nope, it's going to send you 40 billion miles back to Earth, where you're going to land perfectly.
With no pit stops.
No pit stops. I didn't have to stop and pee or grab a snack or anything.
Nope.
You're gonna make it in a short enough amount of time that you're not going to die from starvation, dehydration, anything. Like, yep, it all just works out. Come on, guys. Like, I know that movie audiences are generally pretty stupid. I get that, but we're not that stupid. Really? Is that what we're getting to, guys?
Yeah, I don't know how you not make any stops. I mean, I regularly drove from New York to the Cincinnati area, which is about 600 miles, and I stop probably every 2 or 3 hours. You got to get some Kit Kats and a Frappuccino or a Monster to keep yourself going. Kim, Roy stole a ship, killed a few innocent astronauts, but did save the whole planet and makes it home. Is he a hero? Is he a criminal? Or are we just going to sweep this whole thing under the rug?
I was so conflicted at the very end. Well, first of all, when he's going through the asteroid field, just to touch back on that, and he arrives at his ship, which I thought he was there in the pod, the travel pod or whatever, the single containment unit had completely separated, and then that floated off, and then he somehow just miraculously found this, which was, half a rotation of the biggest planet away from him, but he got there from just an oxygen puff. Anyway, I digress. Is he a hero? Well, yeah, he carried out the mission, but it was against, direct orders from the military. They specifically told him he wasn't allowed to do it, and he did it anyway, and he killed an entire crew membership full of people. So, I don't know, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. I was a little conflicted, though, because when he did land on Earth and they're pulling him out, they were like, "Are you okay, Major?" Nice. That's great. How long was he in the ship for? Because the way that they kind of did the ride back made it seem like it was only a few hours versus, the 80-day struggle that he just went through, but he wasn't all crazy when he landed. I don't know. There was a lot of continuity issues for me.
Well, maybe the perfectly placed nuclear explosion that he didn't suffer any damage from pushed him at a much further rate than he would have been if he would have self-propelled. IG, your thoughts on the movie and your rating?
So I'm highly disappointed in this movie. Now let me start with the good. All right, cinematography in this is beautiful. The CGI in this is top notch. Brad Pitt's acting is probably some of the best of his career. Probably just behind that of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because he was really good in that. Some of the other actors did great jobs in this and everything too. So there are things to like in this movie. The one thing there isn't to like in this movie, as far as I'm concerned, is the movie itself. I didn't like it. I really didn't like it, and I wanted to like it because I'm a big sci-fi fan. It's my favorite genre. It's the thing I like to watch. But if you want to watch about a guy out on his own, doing his own thing in space and everything, go watch The Martian. Great movie. Beautiful cinematography. Fun story. I guess Matt Damon's a better astronaut than Brad Pitt. Maybe that's my own opinion, but I like The Martian. Didn't like this. I didn't like the muted sounds going on just because it just took away from it. And I didn't like the muted just howl going through the whole movie. It just was hard to listen to. There's just, it was a total bait and switch. I think it was false advertising all the way through because I was expecting just like a really fun action space sci-fi movie and I didn't get it. It was way too cerebral, and I don't mind a cerebral movie if it's done well, but there just wasn't enough here. And I think the biggest thing that took away from it, it may have been a groundbreaking short series, 10 episodes, make things happen, actually explain what's happening. It could have been one of the best things ever made, but as a 2-hour movie, it's a piece of junk, and I give it a 3.
Wow. Kim?
Ouch. That stung me. I feel personally offended here.
Are you going to give it a 9 or something? Because
No.
I think it's junk.
No, I don't. I will agree with you. The cinematography of it, the CGI, Brad Pitt's acting. I just love him in general. I met him once upon a time, all the way back in the 90s, and I adore him. I in my eyes, he really can't do any wrong, but the story left a bit to be desired. And there were a couple of character appearances that really just kind of felt out of place for me, or that should have had less or more to do. Ruth Negga from Preacher she makes an appearance in this film, and I would have loved to have seen more of her. She's fantastic, and she's a great actress. And then you've got, what's her name? Natasha Lyonne from Orange is the New Black. And like we were joking around earlier, they got her there on Mars in an orange jumper and the same grody looking smudged black eyeliner underneath her eyes. She looks like she stepped right off the set of Orange is the New Black. She got moved from the A block to the D block and then all the way the fuck out to Mars. And she's still incarcerated looking. So that just didn't feel right to me as far as the movie was concerned. Tommy Lee Jones, Liv Tyler, both have done, sci-fi films before. In one respect, Armageddon, Men in Black, whatever. And they were phenomenal in those movies. So I had high hopes of seeing something like that take place with this. And it didn't happen. For most of Liv Tyler's scenes, it was it could have been CGI for all I care. She didn't really have any actual walk-on roles except for one 4-second scene at the very beginning of the movie, one where she was completely blurred out at the beginning of the movie, and then the rest was just recordings of her. So that was replayed over and over and over again. I don't know. I'll give it a 4.5, and I think that's being generous.
Brutal. Just brutal. And what is it with Liv Tyler anyway? She either is an elf or she's in a space movie. Right. But either way, she's pouting the whole time. Yeah. She's there to pout and brood. Firstly, I admit the pacing of this movie was abysmal. But visually, it knocked my socks off. And Roy McBride's struggle kind of hit home for me. Growing up not knowing a parent is difficult because the question of why aren't I wanted weighs heavily over your life. I can't imagine the person that's shunning you being just a loved and revered hero in their chosen field like space exploration. I love the quiet chaos of this movie. From the first scene to the last, it was beautifully tragic, and Brad Pitt was muted in his brilliance. Roy's issue of being disconnected and feeling alone, even in a room full of people, it just struck home with me. Tommy Lee Jones is always a force when he's on screen, even if they didn't use him near enough in this movie. And he even seemed a bit sympathetic in his madness. Now, I took points away for the ending sequence where they did jump the shark, but I'm not going to be as harsh on this movie as you guys were. Overall, I'm going to give it a 6, mostly for the acting, mostly for the claustrophobic feeling I felt while I was in the theater. And even though I was in a room full of people, I felt as isolated as Roy. I would see this movie. Probably wait till it comes to Netflix or cable. I wouldn't go out and buy it. I probably won't ever see it again. But I think big screen, surround sound, you could do a lot worse when it comes to an out of space film.
All right, so first thing from the news, let's talk about the world of sports. And it's not really the world of sports because he has retired. That's right, Antonio Brown, who in the last 2 weeks has been through 2 NFL football teams, been a subject of a sexual assault scandal, and has apparently now tried to do the Ted Williams and cryogenically froze himself earlier in the year, has decided to retire from the NFL, to the rejoicing of all of us here at the Cinik Radio podcast, I'm sure. He's a great football talent, but just a human mess as far as it comes to everything else.
Yeah, I've been following this pretty closely, and there was a funny line in an article that I read that he's the first player to have his jersey on the clearance rack for 3 different teams at the same time. That was pretty funny, and it was pretty brilliant. This guy is the epitome of human garbage and entitlement. To have 2 women now come out and make abuse charges against you, and on top of that, to threaten her children, and then to run around like a moron after he was released from the Raiders from a $30 million guaranteed contract, 30, to jump down to a 9 with the Patriots, and now he has nothing. It's not retirement when nobody wants you, AB. It's not retirement. You were drummed out of the league, and rightfully so. And I hope another team doesn't ever take a chance on you because you're just a piece of human garbage.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, and that's the truth, right? The one thing that a lot of the sports teams have had happen to them is that they haven't held their players accountable for actions off the field as much as other industries, especially Hollywood. When you do something like these things in Hollywood, you're gone, you're done, and you don't get to come back. I mean, look at Kevin Spacey, one of the greatest actors that we've had. And when it came out, the things that he was doing, nobody's letting him do anything anymore. Like you touch yourself in front of another person and you get put out to pasture for a good year or 2. Louis C.K. did that, and he's getting back, but he's not ever probably going to reach the point where he was before. But sports, you get to beat some people and go out and get drunk and crash cars and assault women and still come and do it because you're a good athlete. Well, I think the NFL in particular needs to start holding a higher standard to their players and putting them out to pasture when they start doing these things. So I'm really hoping that we get more Kaepernicks back in the league and more Antonio Browns out.
And not to jump off topic, IG, but did you hear that Kevin Spacey's accuser tragically killed himself? Wow, if that ain't some House of Cards shit right there. I mean, the guy brings you to trial for, doing inappropriate stuff to him. The trial went tragically astray. It went awry, but then the next thing you know, the kid's dead.
Yeah. That's totally House of Cards thing. Maybe he's got a little more power, and maybe I should apologize to Kevin Spacey here on the Cinik Radio podcast. I didn't mean anything I said. Next story comes from Disney, and that's right. Right now, you can pre-order Disney Plus, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to get a streaming service that's going to be available to everyone on November 12th, because you have to have it ahead of time, or they're going to run out of subscriptions, right? Isn't that how the internet works? There's only so many subscriptions to Disney Plus. All right. I know that selling pre-orders to things is kind of the way of the world now, but does it really make any difference if I buy it now or if I buy it in November?
Yes, because there's the pre-order pricing right now.
Ah, so you save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you get that money back if you get attacked by a space monkey?
No, unfortunately not. Because only
it's not covered under the insurance.
People a year tragically die. #Harambe. But, it's, what was it? I got the email from Chase the other day saying that it was only $5 a month if you went ahead and did the pre-order and paid for the whole year, versus when it comes out, it's going to start at, I think, $7.99. And then
$6.99.
Is it? And then after the 6-month mark, it's going to go up to $9.99. So if you haven't signed up and you haven't already paid for it, it's going to almost double in price.
If you wait 6 months.
If you wait 6 months. Which, there's going to be a lot of people out there that they're not going to know what the heck it is. They're not going to pay much attention to it because right now there's still a lot of Marvel stuff that's on Netflix and whatever. And so they're going to lollygag. And then, 6 months from now, everyone's going to be talking about it, and they're going to want to sign up for it and be like, oh, well, what the hell? Why am I paying more? Well, you snooze, you lose.
Florida people popping up in the news again, of course, because that's where everything happens. But I think this woman has decided to come up with the perfect way to get away with a crime. That's right. Go in, you're going to steal some stuff, go out and get on a bicycle and take off without a shirt on. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you take off your shirt, they might be too distracted to chase you. A woman went into a store and stole a $20 pair of flip-flops and a few other things from a store on Okaloosa Island and took off her shirt and headed down the road topless. That's right. It's not only men in Florida that do crazy things. Women are involved too. Kim, we're looking at you. What were you doing in Okaloosa last weekend?
That sucks. I used to live out there in Fort Walton Beach, and I went to Choctawhatchee High School.
Was it a common occurrence, though, for people to just ride around topless after committing crimes?
Well, yeah, because, that's just... You've got the nice areas out there, and then you don't.
Well, my thing is, this is actually the perfect crime, especially if you're dealing with a room full of men, because they're not going to be able to tell you what she looks like. So they're just going to be so enthralled with what's going on that a description would be out of the question. They'd be like, well, what'd she look like? Oh, she was about a C cup. And,
well, isn't Florida one of the free the nipple states right now for women? Where they're not chastising women for going topless. There's like 4 states.
That may be true, but men are still going to ogle. I'm sorry. It's in our nature. We have to ogle.
Well, it is hot enough down there. I wouldn't wear a shirt if I was a woman either.
And the one that we're all going, please let it be true. Please let it be true. Please let it be true. Marvel's reportedly offering a Wolverine role back to Hugh Jackman. And we're all going just with all, I'll give you both of my children. You can have them both. I mean, honestly, I'd give them both up for a pack of Reese cups, but still, you can have them to give me Hugh Jackman back as Marvel, because quite honestly, at this point, I can't. Maybe it just needs a good 15-year breath before I could see anybody else in it. But right now, I can't see anybody else as Wolverine. It is Hugh Jackman.
If anybody tries to play Wolverine, you throw it back like a small fish. But they did rumor in that story that Wolverine versus Hulk movie, which would be simply incredible if we get the savage old school Hulk rather than the more refined, burnt up arm Mark Ruffalo Hulk that we have right now.
Well, that was issue 6 of the comic series for Wolverine, the original Wolverine comic. This is my alley. I am excited about this. Please let it happen. I have that in the drawer in the other room, and I need to see this come to fruition.
Well, one of my favorite comic posters of all time is a Todd McFarlane one where it's Wolverine's claws and you can see the Hulk screaming in the reflection of the claws.
Yeah, and
it's one of the best comic pictures ever.
Yeah, that was a Kirby illustration.
Game of Thrones. We love Game of Thrones. We covered it here on the Cinik Radio podcast. And one of my happiest things here, they hand out these Emmys to people. And sometimes I'm like, why does that person get an Emmy? Some of them I think are just glad handing people that made a lot of money. But one I truly believe in is Peter Dinklage getting the 4th win for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. You know what? Couldn't go to a better guy. Couldn't go to a better actor. Peter Dinklage. The only unfortunate part about Peter Dinklage is that he's always going to be held back by his height because he is one of the greatest actors of our generation. But because he is a little person, that's always going to shorten the amount of things that he can get to, no pun intended.
Damn.
It'll definitely limit his options only because they don't write that many parts for him. And I think he's definitely going to be typecast as Tyrion Lannister going forward. But that guy is absolutely brilliant. And they shouldn't give him 4 Emmys. They should give him all the Emmys because he acted everybody combined in every category on every show ever. Peter Dinklage is without a doubt my favorite actor from TV, movies, or anything else. The guy could read if there was such a thing as the phone book, and I would still be interested.
I don't think that roles being written for a little person is such a big deal anymore. I think he could act anything. They could put him in a detective movie. They could put him in another elf movie. They could put him in whatever the hell they want to put him in, and I'll watch it. I will turn up for that. I am there because I just absolutely adore him so much.
My last story, and this one's a heartbreaker for us here at the Cynic Radio podcast. It has come out that George Lucas himself, the father of all of our loved and beloved Star Wars, was disappointed in how The Force Awakens copied A New Hope. Now, I'm not going to say that The Force Awakens didn't basically go note for note along the lines of A New Hope, but it was kind of a love story from J.J. Abrams, kind of reimagining A New Hope with a new cast. And I, for one, loved the movie. I thought it was great. It's one of my favorite Star Wars movies, probably my third favorite. Yeah, probably my third favorite Star Wars movie of all time so far. And George Lucas gave up his property. And what he should be happy with is that there's a whole new generation of people that were taken in by this, with a whole new cast and young people and people of color and things to look up to. Beautifully done, beautifully shot, well acted. And George Lucas, with his old crotchety self, has to come out of nowhere doing whatever he's doing with his flannel shirts and his goofy beard and his triple chin, and badmouth something that we're all just really in love with because of him. So I, for one, am totally heartbroken that George Lucas would publicly say this. Look, if you don't like it, that's great. Be happy that they paid you billions of dollars for something that you made up and shot on a shoestring budget 30 years ago.
Well, he has 4 billion reasons why not to open his mouth. Listen, they gave you a lot of money. You had a great idea. You went as far as you could with it. And now you gave it to people that want to expand on the idea. You don't get to run it back and say, well, I would have done it differently. Well, then you shouldn't have took the money, George. You shouldn't have took the money. Maybe you should have produced a movie once in a while rather than just take the property and just sit on it. And then every 5 years or so, you just change it slightly and then try to resell it back to us. I have no respect for him at this point because I think that he kind of rested on his laurels. He did 3 really good films, 3 mediocre films, and then he called it a day. Retire, take your money and go do something good with it and leave the property alone because you really don't have a say anymore. It's like that guy that's complaining about how his ex-girlfriend's being treated. You broke up with her. Deal with it.
On a SNL skit, probably 4 or 5 years ago, Bobby Moynihan did an impersonation of George Lucas, and they were foreshadowing, the sale of Lucas films and how he would still kind of be like, no, you can't do that. No, you got to stop. It's got to be done this way. When I read that particular article, that's the first thing that it made me think of was that old SNL clip. And it's just so perfect to what's actually happening right now.
And that's it. You made it to the end of another episode of the Cynic Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with Cinik, who you can find at CINIKRADIO.com. Also, we had Ryan, who you can find at thejimwits.com, and Kim, who you can find at KMCArtworks.com. Great artists. Go check out some really cool stuff. We'll be back next week with some new stuff for you, probably some news as well. Send your crazy news stories, any comments, questions, and concerns to us at CinicRadio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CinicRadio.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CinicRadio. Find us on Twitter at CinicRadio. And find us on Instagram at CinicRadio. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cynic Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, cups, stickers, all the cool Cynic Radio podcast stuff you could possibly want. It'd help the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for all the love and support. Keep listening, sharing it with your friends, like, listen, and subscribe. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
That's it. We can be done now.